If you've listened to this podcast, then you know the Tighten Up's brought to you by Last Shot Premium Hydration, the official hydration drink of Tighten Up. Their revolutionary formula is packed with vitamin B12 and 0 grams of sugar. It helps the Titans hydrate, replenish, and recover. Try it at Callahan Hall or learn more at lastshotofficial.com.
This is Legend Jeter. Let's tighten up.
Detroit, it's time to tighten up. Welcome to Tighten Up, the podcast, presented by The Shield NIL. Brought to you by Hyperice and Last Shot Energy. A state of the Titans, the latest in Detroit Mercy athletics, and a chance to hear from Titans all over the world. Here's your host, Dan Hasty.
Just 2 more games through the regular season, and then it's Horizon League tournament time. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Tighten Up the podcast. Back for another episode, another edition coming off Detroit Mercy playing 2 games at Callahan Hall to finish up the home portion of their regular season. It is a year that still sees them with some options, some opportunities. We talked to Lance and Lamonte Stone not too long ago, and Lamonte said that given all the factors and the situation that they're in, 10 wins, especially coming off of a 1-win season, is one of the goals right now for Detroit Mercy. They can control that. They've got 2 more regular season games. They would have to find a way to win in Milwaukee. They also play Green Bay, the Fighting Gottliebs coming up in a couple of days. But we've got a whole lot coming up as this week progresses. We're going to be talking to a whole lot of members of the student athlete contingent of Detroit Mercy. But today we get a chance to rap about Titans basketball, men's and women's, and the student media specialist, Alex Khorey, checking in once again to help us do that. AK, good to have you back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And it's fun to be able to do this with you. And now that we've gone through at least the home portion of men's basketball season, the nice thing is at least there's progress. I mean, we saw last year what it looks like to have things go all the way down to the studs, and whether it's the players that they brought in who are still freshmen and kind of trying to find their way, plus this class that they have starting to come together, there's some real possibilities. At least you can feel like they're planting the seeds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been really nice to see, and when you throw 7 freshmen at the wall, maybe not every single one is going to stick, but it's nice to see, it's been different ones at different times, which has been cool to see. And, it's been really nice to see, Nate step up lately and TJ as well. I know Nate, I don't know if it's true anymore, but, as of like a week or 2 ago, he was like the only one in the top 25 of scoring and top 50 in scoring and top 25 in rebounds in the league, the only freshman to be overall in that. So it's nice to see them not only just, be doing well for freshmen, but comparable to other players in the league. They're also on the same, stratosphere. They're doing the same things. And they're only 18, 19 years old. I thought it showed a lot at Oakland when Steve-O played on Mukeba or Mbeka. How do you ever say his name? I thought it showed a lot. I mean, that guy's 22, 23 years old. He's a grown man. And I thought Steve-O gave him a lot of fits. Same with Baru. I thought they were genuinely uncomfortable in that game. And I think it just goes to show you that if you can stick these guys out for a couple of years, they're really going to look like those grown men, and if not better.
I like watching Nate. Nate Johnson has been, and he was one of the first, if not, if memory serves, the first player to commit under Mark Montgomery. So clearly there was some motivating factors to get him here, but I don't think anybody expects a true freshman to have 30 minutes a game. I mean, he's second highest on this team in minutes per contest. And as the season's gone on, he's looked more and more comfortable.
Yeah, I think comfortability is a big point there. When he's out there, he doesn't necessarily always look like a freshman. You know what I mean? When he's running the ball, when he's pushing the ball in transition, he's playing defense up in guards, grills, things like that. He's playing hard. He's playing, with the demeanor of a veteran at the very least. And I know, Coach Monty had seen him at the Breslin before he had even got the job. And, I love signed guys like that. Guys that don't have a lot of offers, but really can play Division I. They just need the right opportunity. So Nate's been able to take that opportunity in stride. I think, me and Jack, like our photographer in media, we were talking about this yesterday. we're kind of making a joke, like he sounds like LeBron. Like if you ever talk to him, he's got that like really deep voice, and obviously we're not gonna call him LeBron 5 points a game, but he really does. He really's got that like older demeanor to him. He's a really nice guy too. Like he's never gonna make you seem like any inferior to him or anything like that. But it is funny though. He does just have a little bit of older demeanor to him.
I don't know if you caught this or not, but I have to shout out our friend Kara Wolfbauer, who does such an outstanding job doing sidelines for the ESPN Plus broadcast. You can see her on the men's side, the women's side. But there was this segment that she had that made us laugh. She was talking about the relationship between Orlando Lovejoy and Legend Jeter, because, of course, they played at Eastern Michigan together. And Orlando, Legend, if you're listening to this right now, do yourself a favor and go back to watch that report, because she started the report by talking about some of the great NBA pairs. And she started with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, then Shaq and Kobe, and then it was Legend and Lando. It was one of my favorite things. And I was thinking, if I'm Orlando, I'm clipping that and I'm putting that up.
No, for sure. I mean, they definitely have. I mean, I think the Fort Wayne shot alone kind of can show you how long they've been playing together since they were 5 or 6 years old, from what I've come to understand. So I think it kind of goes to show you, if you look at that last second shot that Legend hits. I mean, how many times, kind of in the Oakland game, Orlando comes out and shoots the last shot, but in that game he trusted him, he threw it back to him. And I know Legend can shoot 3 100%, but at that point in the season, I think he'd only made 1 or 2. So to be able to trust him just goes to show you that, if they keep playing together, I mean, the trust is there, which is the most important thing.
And I remember talking to one of the coaches, and they were saying, especially as it pertained to, maybe it was the freshmen that they talked into coming this year, or maybe some of the incoming freshmen that they'll have in their next class. But, they were pretty clear, and they said, one thing that we can offer is a platform, and there's a lot of guys that, yeah, sure, you can go to a bigger school. You can go to a MAC school. Maybe you can even go to a Power 5 school. But what would you rather be? Would you rather start your career as a small fish or a big fish? And that's one of the things about mid-majors that opportunity is afforded to you. And at least from the look of it, based on who they brought in last year and who they're bringing in this coming year, they're starting to really sell that.
Yeah, I think so. I think Keyshawn Fisher, who they just signed, is a great example of that. I know PJ had told me he had maybe like Arizona State, NC State, some bigger offers. I'm not sure if that's 100% true or anything. But at the end of the day, a guy who has bigger offers, but he's a little bit of an undersized big. I know he's more of a wing. But like at the same time, I know he's really active on the glass and things like that, especially rim protection and things of that sort. But at the same time, when you're going to a Power 5 school, obviously you have the ability to play and things of that nature. But like you might need a couple things to go your way. You might need a couple guys to not be as good as they might have been when they got brought in the portal for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when you come here, you're able to find your place. You're able to flourish. You're able to find, figure out all those things, just like little things like going to class and, getting on the team bus and being tired and getting up for shoot around even after a tough loss. Things like that are really what you're going to learn in your first year playing college basketball. It's cool to be at the biggest stage. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to be Cooper Flag. Who wouldn't want to be that? But at the same time, it's, not everybody's ready to be there when they're 17 years old. So being able to come in Detroit Mercy and learn from some great coaches who have been at that level as well and know what it takes to be at that level. But it's really just going to be about winning basketball games here, and they're going to have that chance to actually contribute to that, which I think should be every basketball player's number one priority. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Keyshawn Fisher, because we can talk about that. I mean, according to his X account, he's committed to playing for Detroit Mercy, and he's from River Rouge. So think about some of the connections there on the Detroit Mercy staff. Lamonte Stone used to be the head coach at River Rouge. Legend Jeter used to play at River Rouge. Now he's playing, at least in Fisher's case, for overtime elite. But to your point, NC State, Arizona State, Rutgers. So you combined him with some of the other guys you've already inked in, and that's Jaquel Cotton, beg your pardon, and Lance Stone. I mean, now all of a sudden you have the look of guys who can really, really help out.
Yeah, and I'll first just preface real quick that I guess he is not technically officially signed, so that is something that can maybe be added as a footnote. It is just on his end, it's verbal. But at the same time, I will say, just even being able to have talented guys interested in coming in is a big thing, So I think when you can get 2 or 3 talented freshmen to come in, I think it makes it a little easier to hit in the portal. You don't need to bring 6 or 7 guys in. Maybe you look at 1 or 2, and you can really kind of focus and put your resources into like one strength that you want to build that way, which I think really makes a difference in a program like this. But I mean, even just to be able to get guys on campus that are living in the dorms is huge. I mean, I'm always going to say things like that. That's how you're going to build your student body back up. That's how you're going to build, even fan engagement, things like that. Professor, faculty engagement, all that kind of stuff has to do with that. So just to be able to get kids in at a regular college basketball age, it's something that, I saw this the other day, like Rick Pitino said for St. John's, like, we're not recruiting freshmen. Like, there's not a single freshman in the country that can replace Kadary Richmond, for example, or whatever. So it's cool to still be able to do it in a traditional, college basketball sense. I think a lot of time, like some of our alumni and things like that get upset that, things are different. And because of that, we don't have the resources to. But anything, if we don't have the resources, we're still able to have traditional college guys come in, you know what I mean? And maybe they leave 2 or 3 years in, and that's different, and that's unfortunate. But at the same time, there is still things that we can do that aren't any different than they were before.
Let's take a quick break. Hyperice is a proud sponsor of Tighten Up the Podcast, the leading provider of innovative technology for recovery, mobility, and improved performance. Some of the best massage therapy guns you can find. They help the Titans, and they can help you too. Find out more information online at hyperice.com. Did you happen to catch Lance Stone tying the game against Orchard Lake St. Mary's over at Eastern Michigan in that PSL game against in that friendly matchup? That was very cool. It's the Catholic League and Detroit Public School League champions going head to head. So Trey McKinney on the other side with Orchard Lake St. Mary's, he's already committed to go to Michigan. And it was Lance Stone who tied that game as time was expiring to send it to OT. That was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, great moment. That's just good for, even thinking a little bit outside of Detroit Mercy, that's good for Detroit basketball. That those guys. Maybe you want to see that game be played in Detroit, but it's at the same time that's that. I think Earl would have talked about that a lot. Just bringing back Detroit basketball, and that's a really important thing to our program as well.
And I would encourage you, if you haven't seen that play, watching Lance Stone tie the game, and maybe I'm sure you saw it too. But the one thing, and there's only so many clips that look like that clip, but even just watching an abbreviated 10, 15-second clip of watching Lance with the basketball get to the rim and score, you can see the clear and obvious talent that he has. Just his handles alone looks like that can play in the Horizon League right now.
Yeah. And I think they think that too, probably. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume that they're pretty confident in him as well. I'm happy for him. I'm just excited for him to get on campus. You know what I mean? I think that's the easiest first step to really talk about with that. I hope he sets the assist record high enough to where nobody's ever going to touch it again. I hope they go and win a state championship. And I hope he gets to do all the things that he wants to do in high school before he steps onto campus, so that when he does, it'll be nothing but seamless transition for him. And I hope that, he's able to get in there in the summer and things like that. Hopefully we can have more guys in the summer than we had last year. But it'll be great. It'll be great for Lance to get on campus, and I'm happy for him. Even to just do stuff like, all the freshman guys, like, orientation and things like that. I remember doing that as a Detroit Mercy student. It's an exciting time in your life, but to be able to play basketball at Detroit Mercy is a great experience. So, hopefully he does come in and is, effortlessly ready to play.
Now, he felt like a little bit of, I don't want to say an easier pull, but of course, with Lamonte Stone being an assistant coach on staff, that is a big help. But between Jaquel Cotton and now Keyshawn Fisher, one thing is clear based on the previous incoming group and now this one that looks like it's headed our way. Mark Montgomery, that guy might be able to sell ketchup popsicles to a woman in white gloves. I'm telling you, he has a way about him that is convincing.
For sure. I think they're really starting to cook with something a little bit. I think it's tough when you get to the end of the season. Like in terms of games wise, maybe they've been on a tad bit of a skid, but I don't think that that takes away from any of the momentum that they have in general that is building. Because I do think linearly they are going in the right direction 100%. But I think kind of like you said at the beginning, they can still get things out of this season that will help them going into next season, like 10 wins, for example. I mean, I think they can go get one at Green Bay, and then it's just going to be, can you strap up and get one more? That's what's going to be. I think they get Green Bay first, right? They get them on Thursday.
They do.
Yeah, so they go in and win that, and you've got more than a chance to get 10. So you get 10, you start to use that to your advantage. It looks a whole lot better than the 9 does, just for the fact that it's double digits. But as Coach Monty keeps going, he'll just be able to build off little things like that and continue to, get 2-3 years from now, you really might be able to look back and be like, wow, we're really starting to do something here. So you can see kind of the foundation being put into place. I think he's doing a really good job as well. And I think it is cool, always on the contrary, that you can look at the women's program and Coach Kate and things like that and the rebuild that they've been able to kind of orchestrate, and also understand that it does take a little bit of time. So I think all in all, you are right. He really is doing some great things. I think his staff's doing some great things, and I think they're going to continue to.
And I want to talk about women's basketball in just a moment. But as we mentioned, Mark Montgomery, and look, so they're 8-21 right now. Let's say they don't get to 10 wins. Okay, big whoop. They get into the conference tournament, and right now as it sits, they get Northern Kentucky, because they always get Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, right.
Seasons. But, even if they don't win either of these 2 games on the road, it really won't matter if they go out and they surprise somebody in the tournament. If they were to lose the next 2 games and then go beat Northern Kentucky, it's like, who cares about those 2 games?
Yeah, that's true. And I'll just say this. I mean, I think Coach Montgomery remembers going to Northern Kentucky when he was on the staff the first time around, with Antoine, and they went down there, and that team was good enough to go in the NCAA tournament. They lost on a tip-in Tuesday, and I've heard him tell players about that before. So I know that for a fact that still resonates with him in some way. And I'm sure, the more he's taken this job and played them twice, was able to get a win against them as well. I'm sure that felt good, but I'm sure that, those feelings don't go away as a competitor and things of that nature. So if they get Northern Kentucky, I'm sure they're going to go in there, fire blazing and try to rip off a win. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's all got to be in hindsight whenever you're doing something new like this. You can't take your lumps at the current time. You kind of got to sit back, reflect a little bit, and be like, okay, well, we did do these things positively, and it's all going to be relative at the end of the day. Obviously you want to be in first place of the horizon as fast as you can be. You want to be talking about getting a bye and all those things that higher echelon teams in the league do. But at the same time, everybody's got to start somewhere. So whether that's winning one conference game or whether that's getting to 10, conference tournament game or getting to 10, whatever it is, but they're going to have to figure that out, or at least identify it after the season.
And let's also mention that the Titans have already put a win on tape against Northern Kentucky. Granted, they did it in their building, but they already have the formula. They already have the personnel in order to do that. And then on top of it, they've got Mac Mansell back. And I do want to shout out Mac, because it has been a long season. I'm sure in a lot of ways a frustrating season for Mac Mansell. But we were talking to Monty about this after the game against Cleveland State, but he was pretty clear and direct in how much he appreciates what had been done by Mac Mansell to come back this year. He really took one and really is showing what kind of person he is as much as he is a player.
Yeah, and I think you talk about person before player. I think the coolest thing, about Mac is that he's excited to be there. And I know that sounds maybe cliche or things like that, but he really did grow up going to Callahan and watching Ray McCallum and things like that, and, going to games with his dad. And he really does understand what it means or he's at least seen it when Callahan is bumping and when the team is successful and when the program's going how it should be. So I think he understands, what it means in terms of making your mark as a Detroit basketball player to have gone through Detroit Mercy and been successful. And, unfortunately for him right now, as it sits, it's maybe, possibly one of the rougher 2-year stretches that he's been a part of. But at the same time, he suited up every game last year. I think he's the only one to suit up in every game. Even Stone missed a few. He's the only one to suit up in every game last year. He came back from an injury this year when he probably didn't need to. You know what I mean? So I think, and if you think about it, it's not the glamour of, he's not coming back to join a tournament run. Maybe he is, but for the most likely he's not. he's coming back to play with the guys that are in that locker room with him. He's playing with his fellow Titans. You know what I mean? I think that says enough about Mac right there. You know what I mean? To be able to come back and, whether he was going to get the red shirt or not, who knows? And they'll never know that now. But, to be able to come back and burn a potential complete other year, especially in this modern era of what you can capitalize off a year, just to play 6 or 7 games with your brothers. I mean, just right there was enough alone that I'm happy he got to walk, out for senior night and things like that as well. I was happy we got to give him, a little shout out on the video board and things like that as well. But, I think he's embodied being a Titan, just as much as anybody else has in this past few years.
You took the words right out of my mouth. And by the way, if you want to go back 2 episodes ago, episode 24, we got a chance to sit down with Mac, and we ended up spending an hour with Mac Mansell. And he is as fun and engaging and interesting as anybody that you will come across in the Titans program. And to your point, just to echo what you said, he is a Titan. And the way that you can help out people like Mac, as well as the rest of his teammates and the rest of the student athletes at Detroit Mercy, you go online, theshieldnil.org, and you can find out more ways that you can help Mac and his teammates. Now let's talk about women's basketball a little bit. They're now 13-13 on the season. They got off to that really hot start, and they have done a lot of things well, especially when you think back to the last couple of years and before Kay Doctor was there. But it's really been one of those things now where they're running into some really, really tough teams here down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the women's side of the league is very brutal. It's very gauntlet at the top of the league, which is a little different than the men's, which kind of is a little bit more wide open. As the season progresses, it kind of will change. Versus on the women's side, you'll get Cleveland State, you'll get Green Bay, you get Fort Wayne. We've been in that top 4, top 5 this year as well. So you really will get that top 5, 6, established a little bit faster. But it's also just a gauntlet of a league. It's not the Big Ten. You don't get to go to Piscataway on Tuesday and then Champaign on Friday. You're not getting all these different things. You're playing a very regulated, very fomented schedule that is okay, we just played Youngstown 3 weeks ago. We're going back down there, and then we've got to play Cleveland State. So it's very it's very familiar in terms of the league. So I think it's tough to beat a team twice. So I think, to come out and start off hot, you know what I mean? And it comes down to the stretch. If you're not hitting a lot of shots, which I think they have just been a little colder from the few games that I've watched compared to maybe the start of the year, but it's tough. It's tough to beat a team twice. So now I think is really the point where they're able to lock in and kind of hone in and relax a little bit and understand okay, well, we got them once. Maybe they got us a second time around, but this is when it really matters. You know what I mean? March is really when it matters. That's when you want to play your best basketball. That's what MD always used to say, at least. It didn't matter if we had one win. If we were playing our best basketball in March, that's what was going to matter at the end. So I think that's got to be what it is for them. I know last year they kind of finished 500. They got that experience winning a conference tournament game. So hopefully this year they can get to Indy and hopefully, all the way in. But I think Indy would be a great place for them to be.
Now, I'm looking at the Horizon League standings right now, and here's how it shakes out. So there are 2 absolute buzzsaws at the top. And for what it's worth, over the last 3 games that the Titan ladies have lost, the 2 of those 3 have been against teams that are 18-1 in conference. That's Green Bay, and 17-1 in conference in Purdue, Fort Wayne. So it has been, like you said, it is a gauntlet. But as you scroll down, you see Detroit Mercy sitting in the number 5 spot, although there are 2 other teams with the exact same conference record. So I'll pose it to you, Alex Khorey of Detroit Mercy Athletics. Now, what do you know about that tiebreaker? Because Northern Kentucky's coming up next, so obviously the tiebreaker only means so much. They can really take a big step forward into getting that last spot among the teams that get a bye.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to it 100%, but I do know that the Horizon has very specific tiebreakers, and they'll do conference record, and then I can't remember if it's against the rest of the league or against head-to-head, something like that. But they do take in head-to-head matchups and league records, obviously, as a lot of conferences do. Very, very. But who'd you say they have this weekend coming up?
They've got Northern Kentucky, who they're tied with and it's in Detroit, by the way. Well, but they've got that team, and that's not going to be easy. They're right there next to them. Wright State's also tied at 7-11, so they get those 2. And then the 3 teams underneath them: Youngstown State, Oakland, IU, Indy. They're just 1 game behind them. So that 5th and final spot is up for grabs. But if it is the case where Detroit Mercy sits in that number 5 spot, they do control their own destiny.
Yeah. Well, barring a random tiebreaker rule that's fleeting in my mind. I mean, if Northern Kentucky's right there with you, it seems a little bit simple to me in that aspect that it's just like win and you got it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the best way to do it. You don't want to go out, get a good win against somebody in the conference, and then find out like, oh, we didn't have enough like Garner point system or whatever the tiebreaker would be. You know what I mean? You don't ever want to get bumped in a spot because of that. You want to get bumped because of what actually happened on the court. So in that case, that's a great opportunity for them to control their own destiny and get in. And I think if they are able to get that 5 spot, that'd be huge. That's one home win and you're in Indy. And I can't really remember. I don't think we've had a team represent us in Indy yet since they've moved the format there. And, if you ever watch the Horizon League commercial, it's like, man, like we're not even in this commercial. You know what I mean? It's just like our logo or whatever. It's like, okay, send a team to whether men or women's, but in this case, more likely women's. Shout out to them. That would be huge for the athletics department as a whole. So I think that'd be huge if they get the 5. This game against Northern Kentucky is huge. Anybody listening should definitely go out and support. For the women, I think, coming and showing up with a good group, you can make an impact on the game. I think that's the coolest thing about coming to Callahan, as a fan. Yeah. So, if you really do, want to see us represented in Indy, that this game's going to be a big part of that. So I would definitely say that.
Yep. It's DetroitTitans.com. Get your tickets. That's Thursday night, 7 p.m. It's the last regular season home game from women's basketball. It's also Fan Appreciation Day. So make sure you get out there in droves and get behind Kate and the rest of those ladies. They go to IU Indy on Saturday for a noon contest. But if they can get that win against Northern Kentucky, they'll be in really good shape. And what's interesting, just looking over the standings in women's basketball, there's really no team that is the runt of the litter, for lack of a better term. Like, I mean, there's typically always a team that is just kind of in shambles. But right now, to be separated, the last place team in the Horizon League is just 2 games behind Detroit Mercy, who is 5th. Let's see, 2.5 games to be exact. But Detroit Mercy, the 5th spot, and Milwaukee, who's sitting there at the bottom right now in 11th, they're 5-14. So it's really kind of tight. So even if you don't get one of those spots, if you don't get one of those top 5 spots, that first round game is not a gimme.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be a gimme in the I think last year, the men's team walking into Milwaukee and almost getting a win shows that a conference tournament game is quite literally never going to be a gimme. But specifically for the women's team, you're right. The league is competitive. Even going back on what I said a little bit earlier, where I didn't mean in terms of like saying it's a gauntlet that the teams at the bottom are competitive either. Just means that first place is that much farther away from, 3rd and 4th and things like that. But, thinking about that, Milwaukee just almost came into Callahan a couple weeks and got one off of them. So I think, while the competition might not be super separate or anything like that, you just got to be ready to play. And no matter who it is, whether you got Cleveland State or Green Bay and you're on the road, or you have the worst place team at home in Callahan, it really should always be the same thing. You know what I mean? You got to be locked in. You got to be ready to win. You got to be ready to win the game. You got to pay attention to the team scout. You know what I mean? You got to take care of your body. You got to be healthy. All those things go into play. And at the same time, these kids are all going to class. You know what I mean? We just talked about it. It's not the Big Ten. Like, this isn't, it's not like a super, there's no cushy like lifestyle going on there. It's grit. You're in a old barn in Callahan all the time. Like, you're working out, and these are Division I athletes. They're supported, of course, but like at the same time, this is when it comes down to all the hot summers when it's slippery in Callahan from how humid it gets and things like that. And you're putting up shots and all these things. It comes down to like just being ready to go, playing for that, the name on the front, things like that nature. But you're right. You can't overlook anybody. And clearly, the standings will show that these teams are a lot closer, that maybe even overall record will show as well.
So remind me, and what was it? We talked about Mac Mansell being honored before the contest for the final home game on Friday, but did I also see you out there on the floor as well? What are you doing out there?
Well, I worked a lot of hours for the department, so I wanted my plaque. I wanted my degree for it. But we were kind of just joking around in the office a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. They were like, you want to walk? And I was like, I mean, I'll do it. Why not? Actually, the only reason I really ended up going through with it, I didn't get a senior night for like any sport in high school. like, because it was just COVID back then. So I was like, honestly, like, why not? Like, I didn't get to do the whole thing where you get to say like what your favorite memory is and things like that. But it was definitely cool to, be able to get honored. Like, it was a lot of different games in there. I did a lot of different things, for a lot of different sports. So it was definitely cool to be able to get out there on the main floor, for the last go around at least. And, moving forward, I mean, I'm still working through the spring sports and things of that nature. But yeah, no, that's pretty funny that you said that.
That's awesome. Well deserved. And before we go, I did want to also give a shout out to Lance Stone. We forgot about this, wanted to mention it too. He got nominated for Mr. Basketball. I mean, there's a lot of good players in the state of Michigan, and he ended up as one of the 4 players nominated for Mr. Basketball this year. Feels like it's been a while since Detroit Mercy has ended up with a Mr. Basketball nominee.
Yeah, I mean, I know Ryan Hurst was in there at one point a couple years ago, maybe as well. But yeah, no, shout out to Lance. That's a big deal. I know. I mean, I got to see, working the game at Callahan. I got to see Trey McKinney and Leroy play, and they were super impressive players. So just to be put in the same threshold and you're coming to Detroit Mercy is a big deal. I think that shows that he's going to make an impact. So shout out to Lance. It's a big deal.
Congratulations to him. And before we go, for those of you who did not catch wind of this, there was also something that went down in Horizon League circles. We found out that the IU Indy men's basketball team, a team that just ended up coming to Callahan Hall and picking up a win the other day, their team bus caught fire during their trip back to campus after their game at Northern Kentucky. There's some pictures out there on social media, and their bus is completely charred. And thankfully, everybody made it out okay. I guess a few wallets and cell phones ended up going up in flames. But boy, that is crazy. And that is a really, really scary thing. And it just reminds you that, at the end of the day, we're just playing basketball games. But it's a lot more important that these guys are safe.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you said at the end, like, what did LeBron say after the season last year? It's just basketball, man. So I think it's easy to kind of put things in perspective whenever things like that happen. And I hope they're able to figure it out, because I know like their team gear burned up. Maybe it was only one uniform, but like I know different teams travel differently. So if they had extra gear on that bus, I hope they have what they need to get through the rest of the season. I know they're reaching out to some community members and things like that, trying to fix a couple of things or replace a couple of things that they lost, but. It is crazy. And again, it just goes to show you what we've been kind of talking about. It's just like, this is a different league. It is Division I sports, but you're busing to conference games, you know what I mean? And things like that. And that can leave you, open to breakdowns and things like that, as I'm sure you're more than familiar with in the past, traveling with UDM. So, but at the end of the day, I'm glad everybody's safe. That's the most important thing, because like you said, these are college kids that have a big future ahead of them. You never want to see anything unfortunate happen that can't be, redone.
You haven't lived until you've been on a bus that breaks down. And between college basketball and minor league baseball, I've ridden a lot of buses in my time. And I won't say which team this was with, but there was one time where I was on a bus for a team, and their bus broke down on the way to an airport. And it was about probably, I want to say, maybe 500 yards from the door where you go to check in and drop off your bags and everything. And so we had to pull off onto the side of the road, and then we had to take all of our stuff off the bus and then walk up this super narrow 2-lane highway. And we're just like, if this is the way that we lose one of our players, if the team knew about this, if the people in charge knew what we were doing right now. I have heard about teams that have had to do Ubers because the bus doesn't work. Yep. These stories are everywhere, and they cross all these different kinds of sports. Doesn't matter if it's basketball, baseball, football, hockey. I mean, everyone, especially at the local level, is pretty much busing everywhere. It is a little bit more rare to be doing the flying, to be doing the airport stuff. A lot of the times that you're moving around, especially like, whether it be in the Midwest League doing baseball or in the Horizon League doing basketball, you got a bus just about everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's really only like a non-conference thing if you fly, or maybe occasionally you get a flight to Green Bay and Milwaukee because that's just so far. But yeah, it's a bus league, and I would say, but at the end of the day, I think that's something the Horizon League is proud of being. I don't think it's something to where it's like, oh man, we got to get on the. I think they're happy to be a regional league in the era of ridiculous conferences that don't match any geographical requirements or anything like that. So I think they're still proud of the fact that they're a bus league, and they're still proud of the fact that they have close proximity campuses, and the fact that they have their market within the Midwest and things like that. So I think it's all part of the players. It becomes a part of them and kind of the brand of basketball that the Horizon League wants to bring to its fans.
Alex Khorey within Student Athlete Communications at the University of Detroit Mercy. Is there anything else that we should be keeping an eye on that's going on beyond basketball within the student athletes? I know we've seen lacrosse playing some games. I know there's some other sports that are going on as well. What else is on your radar right about now?
Yeah, I know, women's lacrosse won this weekend. So very big shout out to their coach. I know that's her first win. That's a big deal. Yeah, as well. And I know also men's lacrosse is hunting for that first one as well. I'd be super happy, when they'll be able to get one as well. But just moving forward, I think within the spring sports, as the weather starts to break and as basketball, hopefully, obviously women's basketball this week is maybe the last one if they don't get a home game. So just like really supporting. But I think this year overall is just gonna be looked at as a year of like development. That's important. We still were able to be successful. We had a men's soccer player drafted in the first round. That was still, even thinking about that is crazy. Women's soccer had such a great season. Basketball's been able to do things well on both sides. So I think next year though, we'll really start to see some things, really start to pick up and be noticeably different. Which I think is a big deal. I think as things start to go, and I don't know, this is just like a little speculation, but as if things start to move progressively forward, I think a lot of the things that a lot of our alumni and donors and things like that have wanted to see might start to take shape. But at the same time, it's always going to come back on, in this modern era, it's going to come back on donors and things like that. Whether that's NIL or whether that's regular, donations to the department, everything. I think everything helps. I think people think that, just because it's a Division I operation, they can't, a couple $100 here, there can't help, but it definitely can. You know what I mean? I think especially for the smaller sports that don't get, maybe necessarily as much funding, it can definitely go a long way. So I would just say that from a fan perspective, definitely be excited about what's going on in Callahan across the board. But at the same time, see how you can support, it'll be appreciated in any way.
Alex Khorey, inside of Detroit Mercy Student Athlete Communications, who was honored at midcourt because of his appearance here on Tighten Up the podcast. Alex Khorey, appreciate your time, my friend.
Appreciate you. Go Titans.
That's Alex Khorey, and that's another edition of The Story with Alex Khorey here on Tighten Up. Thanks so much for listening. We've got more shows coming up to you in the later part of this week. You also heard that Alex mentioned soccer. I'm going to talk a little bit of soccer. Haven't had a chance to do that a whole lot, and that's going to come up in a near future episode here of Tighten Up. Don't forget to like the show, subscribe, follow, rate the show as well. That helps a ton. Leave a comment. You can find The Shield NIL on X and on Instagram at The Shield NIL. You can follow me as well at that Dan Hasty at X and also Dan Hasty on Instagram. Back with more in the days ahead, and I'll talk to you Titans of Industry next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tighten Up, the podcast. Join our community at The Shield on theshieldnil.org and follow us on X and Instagram at The Shield NIL.
If I can tell you one thing above all else as part of this show, it would be this. If you're unfamiliar, if you haven't done it before, join the community at The Shield Online. It's online at theshieldnil.org. That's theshieldnil.org.